my direction, which we can
Yeah,
use.
you're not just gonna get rain, you're gonna get like a whole like what do they call it there?
Oh, a haboob,
Soon.
haboob.
A what?
It's called a haboob, like a boob, haboob.
Oh,
Yes, for those of you who
haboom.
didn't know, we get really crazy sandstorms here in Phoenix, and they are called haboobs, which I learned when I moved here. And they like come out of nowhere, and you just see a wall of orange sand, and then it hits you, and it's just like nuts, and then it passes. It usually is followed by rain. Have any of you guys been to Arizona and experienced our monsoon season? It's wild. I never knew before moving here that they have a monsoon season, but Arizona does. It's very cool. And it's in the middle of the summer, so we need it because it gives us a little relief.
Oh,
So
the monsoon is oh, got it.
you
Okay.
usually sometimes you'll get habooms during the winter, but most of the time it's during our monsoon season. Yeah.
Huh.
But well, I think we can get started now. So I'll let Shannon take it from here, and I'll just keep monitoring. And if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat. But we're a pretty small group tonight, so feel free just to come off mute and ask questions if you feel like it. I think most of you have been on here before, so I'll let Shannon introduce herself as well. She's one of our cancer mamas and our amazing board member. So Shannon can give you a little bit of her story for those of you who haven't met her. I'm Dana Hinton, the executive director over here at Kick Cancer. And I was just reflecting on our last year. We're almost at 1 year of our Thrive Talks. April will be our 1 year anniversary of doing these talks. So
Um,
um, but tell other families, other parents, we are going to launch a campaign to try to, Cheyenne and I just created a one sheet. We're going to get these out to hospitals so that we can just invite as many families as possible to join us on these talks, just to build this community and really just help support them. So you'll probably be seeing more faces as the months go on. So Shan, you can take it from there.
Yeah, so just like you, I am a cancer mama. I came across Kit Cancer and Susan Johnson almost 8 years ago now, which is crazy how quick time flies. So our daughter is in survivorship right now. But so much of the stuff that we learned back then, I truly feel is what helped her to thrive, hence the Thrive Together talks. And still today, applying a lot of those tools in survivorship as cancer prevention and so forth. And so um, now here, loving this community, wanting to serve, wanting to give back because I feel like so much was given to us during that time. And I know season does not need much introduction, but this Thrive Together talks really was inspired by her education and what she's been giving throughout the years. This is just a place where we can connect as childhood cancer families. Our aim is to empower you as a parent and help you understand how to advocate for your child, the best, giving them the best possible care, how to support their journey through cancer treatment and in recovery. If you've missed any of our Thrive Talks, they are always posted on our YouTube channel, the Kick Cancer Movement YouTube channel. But Susan Johnson, obviously, is the founder of Kick Cancer, creator of Thrive Through Cancer Formula, podcast, so many things coming up. She's still continuing her education. She blows my mind absolutely every day. I'm inspired by her and I'm like, what is she learning now? So thank you, Susan, for joining us tonight. And I'm really excited about learning about diagnostic testing, what that means during treatment and even after.
Oh, well, thank you, Shannon. I love it. It's so cool to see like how this, like our movement of Kick Cancer has evolved. And one of the like my absolute favorite Christmas cards that we ever got. And by the way, if you don't know us, we move a lot. We've decided to call ourselves slow travelers, where like it feels a little bit better than being like, yeah, we move all the time. We're like, no, we're slow travelers. We travel and we slowly kind of migrate to different areas and have the privilege to do that due to our lifestyle. And we homeschool and work from home. But also, cancer changed that whole perspective for us. But anyways, coming back to Shannon, in that process of being a slow mover, people are like, "Hey, can I send you a Christmas card?" And we're like, "I don't know. Yes, but I don't know where I'm going to be. Anyways, one of my very favorite Christmas cards, and even my kids loved it, was when Shannon sent it to us. It was a few years ago. And it was like, I cried. I got the Christmas card and it was a picture of Paisley and well, it was your whole family, Shannon, but and just like this sweet note, I have goosebumps talking about it and just like how, yeah, we were just like, you were blessed by connecting and it made me go like, this is why we do what we do is things like this. And now friends with Shannon, she's a part of our movement and an integral part of the community connection. So that's what we're about. We're really like our goal is impact. And we really want to help as many families as possible. Being a nonprofit in the last few years, of course, has been a little challenging. And so our resources have been a bit limited. But we're hoping that'll shift. We have some big plans in place and a lot of things happening and kind of just on the brink of making some big shifts to be able to reach more families. But it's such an honor. I was just talking to actually kind of crazy my housekeeper. So we live in Mexico right now for just a little bit longer. We have some big plans we haven't really shared publicly. We'll share as they become a little bit more solid. I don't even think Shannon knows, but we've been in Mexico for almost the last 2 years. And one
Coming
thing
to
I will tell
Tennessee,
you,
right? You're coming
what?
to Tennessee, right? That's your next
I mean,
on the East Coast
that's what
now.
you
I
would
mean,
think. You would think it'd be Tennessee. Like it would make sense for all the things, but no, it's going to be the opposite of what you would guess and what most people would think. Like, where are you going to move back to? You're going to be like, you'd move back there? Yeah, that's where we're moving back to. We'll share more as we can. Um, but in the meantime, as we're navigating like through all of this and just thinking of all the ways that we can impact and we can continue to grow and continue to expand our movement, we've just realized like there's so much to be said about having a community when you're walking through something really, really hard, right? And just having somewhere to land when you're going through hard things. And in the midst of all of that, like where do you lean into when you're kind of walking through something you feel super isolated? And that's what our goal has always been is like to be that place where you can kind of fall into and you can lean into when you're walking through something really challenging. And so while our situation has been a little bit different in being in Mexico, we have this lovely lady. Oh my gosh, I'm actually really sad to tell her we're going to be moving because I love her to death and we've taken care of her family and I think she's going to cry and that makes me like, oh my gosh, I can't leave her. But anyways, she was telling me today this is in Spanish. And by the way, my Spanish is not great. I have learned, and I'm like the translator for our family, and so it's fairly like I can communicate, beyond bathroom and beer and whatever people say the essentials are. But she's telling me in Spanish today, I follow you on Facebook, is what she says, and I see your stories, and I can't believe like the families you work with, and I can't even imagine how hard that is. And I said, "Oh my gosh, it's like such a beautiful gift. Like I can't even explain to you what the gift that it is." And yeah, there's times that are hard. Natalia, hi pretty girl. I see you. I see your cute face. But I get to see these beautiful kids and I get to walk through your lives and support you and it is like it's my whole world. So while it's not what everybody's called to, right, is to walk into a situation where you experience at some point in your life and you walk through tragedy, you walk through trauma, not every single person is called to like step into that and walk people through it. But I do think we're all called to go, how can I use that? Whether it was a pediatric cancer diagnosis or losing your sister to a disease that took her whole neurological and nervous system away. Or maybe you lost somebody to suicide, or maybe just degenerative disease overall. Like, no matter what your story is, I do feel like God will make good out of it, and He will turn your pain into a purpose. But I don't mean it has to be right now, and it doesn't have to be exactly with the situation that maybe you're walking through in the moment. But that's kind of where we're at. We're just like, God, you use us. You like take what we walked through and navigated. do what you want with it. And we've been blessed to be able to continue to do that. And so where we're at now is, as you guys know, walking many of you through just navigating a diagnosis that you never even imagined. And it's an honor and it's horrible and beautiful all in the same time. But what I wanted to share with you today, and what Shannon had told me a lot of you had just kind of had an interest in, and as Dana navigates emails and Shannon navigates Instagram messages, questions that come in are like, what are things I can do to just help know how to support my child more? And diagnostic testing is a big piece of that. But diagnostic testing is really tricky when you're walking through treatment. And so I want to help save you money. I want to help save you time, but I want to also help you, like, how can I support my child in the best possible way to know root cause? Because I would actually love if you put a 1 in the comment in the chat area, I should say. Put a 1 in the chat area if you would agree that people don't get cancer because they were deficient in chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery. So if you don't believe that cancer happens because they were deficient in chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery, put a 1 in the comments. And I would imagine, I mean, if you're on here, yeah, most of you are like, yeah, no, I know that's not why, right? And while I fully believe that chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery can play a role, I know it can. In fact, I will tell you right now, for type B ALL, which is what my son had, which is what Natalia had because she's healing, which some of your kids have, like, that is chemotherapy is actually a really effective method of treatment for that. And even now, knowing what I know in the last 10 years and studying what I've studied, I truly believe chemotherapy is an effective piece to type B acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Now, can I say that for every type of cancer? No, I can't. I wish I could, because I know pediatrics, right? Under 18, you're required to go through conventional treatment. And do I agree that every bit of conventional treatment is ideal? I don't. And I'm on a mission to try to make change in that world of combining conventional treatment, because many pieces are necessary, with the alternative treatment that God really created. He created the world with so many things that we can do to help our kids. So with all that said, I want you to understand, like, there is an approach that has to be a little bit, how would you say, like, accepted unconventionally. Like, maybe you're not super happy that your child is walking through this and they're forced to go through something. Actually, Warren is one of our families that's in our program, and his son was recently diagnosed, and kind of just, him and his wife felt thrown into this conventional world and didn't realize, like, wait, what? I don't have a choice of what I can do. So I recognize there's this piece that you want as a parent, control. Like, I want to be able to play a role in my kid's healing journey, but there's certain aspects that aren't allowing me to feel like I can. And so whether you're in that position where you're like, I'm feeling forced in this situation, or maybe you're at peace about the situation that you're in and where your child's treatment is, there is so much you can do, and you can play a role, and there's things that you can have control of. And one of those is the diagnostic testing piece. And so I want to kind of break that down for you, and I'd love to open it up to questions as well, especially because it's a small group. We can kind of navigate through those questions. But what I would say is, when you're walking through active treatment, when your child's in active treatment, even though they may be in remission, I'm going to use Natalia because she's one of our families in our Thrive Through Cancer Formula program. I know them very well. I've gotten to hug her and kiss her on the forehead. But in the kiddos situation that they're in active treatment, but in what we call, air quotes, remission, right? No detectable cancer cells. You would imagine that, oh my gosh, there's so much testing we could do to kind of figure out root cause. The idea of diagnostic testing is we want to know what went wrong in the body, Where did things stop functioning the way that we were created to function so that we can know how to assess and address that situation? And so when we're walking through active treatment, there's a couple tests that we can do to help us understand a little bit bigger picture of what happened and what can we do to start supporting that. There's also a limit of what we can do through active treatment, and I'll explain that in a moment, but let me just say, before we get into what we can do through active treatment, and then I'll address what we can do post-treatment, I think it's super important to understand as a parent, it is not your fault. It is not your fault. You are not powerful enough. Mariella or Jacqueline, Elaine, Denise, Warren, Nicole, Eric, Shannon, you're not powerful enough to create cancer in your child. There's nothing that you could do to create a disease in your child. You're not powerful enough to do that. So you first need to understand that. This is not your fault. Okay? It is not your fault. And I understand what it feels like because you do take the guilt and you carry it. And you think, especially with my son, he was not even 3 years old. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? How is like what? He went from breast milk to bone broth. So where did I screw up? It wasn't my fault. And it's not your fault. So you have to take the information you learn and realize like this is a helpful tool to kind of help us navigate how can we help our child. But it doesn't lie in guilt or shame or responsibility. Okay? Because when we know better, we can do better. And I know for a fact that none of you knew, like, how would I have known that my child maybe had specific genetic mutations that could have triggered a diagnosis that were from inherent emotions, by the way, that I had no role in, or specific genetic mutations that came from past generations I didn't know. How would I have known as a mom? Maybe there were trapped emotions that came from great grandpa, which I know for a fact that that's another piece of this that we walk through our Thrive Through and Beyond Cancer formula families, like the emotional component of healing that we didn't know. So there's so many factors that can play into this that is not something that that's not tangible for us, right? So then how do we take that information going, okay, so our child has cancer. Awesome. It's not my fault. Well, then what do I do with this? And I want you to look at what I'm going to share with that perspective. It's not your fault. You didn't create this. You're not powerful enough to create cancer in your child. Okay. God will use every single situation if you let him for his glory and for his good. But we have to be willing and we have to step into that and go, okay, like, fine, do with us what you will. Like, make the best of the situation. And so if that's the lens that you're willing to walk through, then I want you to understand the next few steps you can take to go, okay, so let's get to the bottom of this. Let's figure out what was it that could have triggered and turned on the oncogene that could have triggered the cancering process. Because by the way, we're all creating cancer cells in our body every single moment of the day. Cancer cells are being created. Just so you know, like it's constant all day long. Our body is creating cells. Some of them are cancerous, some of them aren't. And when our immune system is firing and it's like all on board, think of a military. when all the soldiers are not hungover and they're showing up to battle and they're like ready to go, right? They didn't have a night at the bar the night before, but they're like full on armed up, ready to go. Anything that comes in their way, they're going to destroy. If those soldiers show up and they're like, you know what, last night there was some hot chicks at the bar and we had a great time. There was some really good live music. We drank till about 4 a.m. And then at 6 a.m. we got a call. We're supposed to show up and like fight off the whatever bad guys. You think how good are they going to be? Not so good, right? So they had a great intention. I mean, they showed up, they got accepted to military camp, but they weren't performing how they were expected to perform. And so they might have gotten weakened, destroyed, and things might have gone downhill. So think of that being the cancering process is we were all created with the ability to kill off cancer cells, but if things get weak because of whether it be genetic dispositions, nutrition deficiencies, environmental exposure, emotional issues, things start to get weakened, and that's where cancer can develop. And so what we want to do is we want to go, okay, how can we like start to peel the layers of the onion and go, ooh, what can we get to the root cause of to see what might not be operating as good? And so while going through active treatment, my very favorite test is we call it nutrigenomics. So it's 3x4 is the one that we use with our families in our program. And we recommend our families run this test and we do an interpretation and an in-depth analysis of their epigenetics, essentially. It's not an epigenetic test, that would be incorrect. It's a nutrigenomics test. So it looks at your genes and your DNA and how you were created. And so Mariella, because I'm looking at you, like if you did that test when you were 16, as long as you didn't have a bone marrow transplant, you would never have to do that test again. That information doesn't change, okay? So if you do that test now, you never have to do that test again. Unless you have a bone marrow transplant, then things change a little bit. So this is a test that shows how we were created and how we came into the world. And it will show us if you have any disposition to a poor ability to detox. It will show us if you tend to be somebody that doesn't tolerate caffeine well. It's going to show us if gluten could be problematic for you. It's going to show us if you work out 79 hours in one day and you can't lose weight, it's going to show us that. It is going to show us your predisposition. And here's the really good news with this report is when I see that, I go, oh my gosh, yeah, she's not detoxing. He has an inability to absorb and tolerate choline, which is an essential nutrient. She cannot fight inflammation very well, which is necessary for health. And the good news is there are things we can do through the study of what's called epigenetics to turn those genes off and on. So for Elaine, if I looked at her genetic report or her child's and it said, yeah, Elaine has a really hard time breaking down toxins. Like she can't eliminate toxins very well. That's not her destiny. That just is information that I go, okay, awesome, good to know. So now I'm going to support Elaine based on this information to help turn that genetic SNP back on to make it work better. So your DNA is not your destiny. And the beautiful thing around the study of epigenetics is that you can turn on and off genes with nutrition, detoxification, and lifestyle. So think about Dana's sister. She died of ALS. It's an incredibly horrible disease. Like, talk about feeling like you have no control. Every part of your body starts to break down. And you literally have no control. So what they may say, and I don't know, I'm not as familiar, Dana could probably speak to this much more in depth, but what they will say is a lot of times that can be genetic. So what if we were to look at genes early on in life when our kiddos are still young and go, oh my gosh, they have this genetic snip. A snip, I want you to think of a snip as like if you had a piece of yarn and you were trying to, I was going to say sew something. That's not what you do with yarn. Okay, listen, I'm not a homemaker. Okay, I can't keep plants alive.
I think you knit with yarn
Or crochet.
or crochet.
Crochet.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Never done either. I keep my kids alive and that's about the extent. Oh, and a cat. So you knit or crochet with yarn. So if you're trying to knit or crochet with yarn, but the yarn had like a snip in it, somebody took scissors and broke it a little bit where it wasn't fully torn, but there was a little bit of a snip to that, right? It's going to be harder to work with. Yeah. And it has the potential to break and then ruin everything. And you're like, well, there goes the beanie I just made for my grandma. It's done. So I want you to think of a genetic snip like that. Like it's just something that's been kind of compromised. Things aren't flowing or working very well. But with genetic snips, we can try to repair that. And this is in the last decade, I would say maybe 15 years, that this information has become relevant where they can say, oh my gosh, you can change your genetics. Like this is beautiful information for us. So all that to say, coming back to active treatment, when you're walking through active treatment, one of the most important tests, and by the way, in remission for all of you, your whole family, this is a test that I highly recommend. It's called 3x4. Shannon or Dana can put the link in the chat. It's just 3x4 Genetics, their website. You can go in. If you're not a part of our program, you're able to just go, you can go to their website and order the test. We don't charge more for the test in our program. I think it's $199 or $299. I can't remember. But it's either $199 or $299 per test. That test will give you a fairly comprehensive report. $299? Yeah, $299. So that's right. It'll give you a fairly comprehensive report. But if you're like me and outside of being in this profession, sometimes I look at things and like, oh, I just want can you just give me the cliff notes? Like I need the breakdown. I need the cliff notes of the situation. So while it gives you a fairly in-depth report that you could take the time to interpret yourself for sure, you might need the help of a practitioner to kind of come alongside you and be like, okay, here's what I'm going to give you the cliff notes with a protocol, right? But this is such a powerful step in the healing journey. And it'll actually tell you a little bit about you as well. It'll tell you like, because your child, if it's your blood, right? If it's your child from birth, then you know that maybe some of those genes are inherent. And so that's why we did it as a family of 4. My daughter was adopted at birth. So she has completely different genetics than my husband, myself, and my son. And so it was really telling for us. Like we wanted to see everybody's genetics so I know how to support everybody well. Believe it or not, when I looked at my genetics, and this is a good example, and it actually was really surprising to me. One of my genes has what do you call it? I'm predisposed to obesity. So here's an example of how you can turn genes off and on. Both my parents, neither of them are obese. Neither of their parents were obese. There's nobody in my direct family line from my parents that were obese, but I have a predisposition to obesity. And what's interesting is I look back at my family line, how I was raised healthy. I mean, my mom used canola butter and like the things back, and I got Captain Crunch once a week. Like there were things, right, that they were doing the best they could, but fairly healthy, but my grandpa was Armenian. And so from our lineage, there wasn't a lot of processed foods and things like that. But it was really interesting for me to read my genetic report and be like, oh my gosh, I'm predisposed to obesity? What? That's crazy. And what a beautiful example of how we can turn genes on and off. So when I look at a child, if I'm working with your child, I'm able to see, look at their genetic report and be like, okay, this is super helpful. It gives me a roadmap of how to support them. Here's the other thing I want to tell you if you're walking through cancer. There are certain people that should not do some of the trending and also super helpful modalities of healing, like methylene blue and high dose vitamin C. There are genetic SNPs that some people cannot tolerate either. Okay. So this is why we don't want you following cancer advice from influencers online. You have to be so careful and so aware. And while nutrition advice is fairly general, and I'm a big proponent of like, find a couple people you really trust and follow them. But don't just hook up to high dose vitamin C if you don't know your child's genetics or methylene blue. Like there are genetic SNPs that mean you don't tolerate those well. So that would be the first kind of the foundational test for families going through active treatment is doing your nutrigenomics test, which we recommend 3x4. There's another company that is called Nutrition Genome. Wait, I think
Yeah,
Nutrition Genome. Is that
nutrition
right?
genome. I think it's at least $100 more though, and they don't.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm. Because I paid 400 for Paisley's. I haven't paid for the rest of the family yet. We're saving up. I just kind of assumed that with siblings and everything from the same line, but since diagnosis, we've been all trying to eat the same. They both do detox baths. They both do castor oil packs. Still 8 years later, just because I feel there is some genetic predisposition there and
Yep.
siblings. So, but yeah, it's 400.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's good to know.
We have a
So
question from Denise
3x4,
real
and
quick.
what's that?
Denise has a question real quick. Denise,
Oh
you wanna-
yeah, Denise, go for it.
I was just wondering, with these tests, like if you're like if his primary team referred him out to a genetics counselor, are these like similar to nothing? They just check for like, is it even not like worth going to a genetic counselor that his oncology team was like, oh, go check them out?
It's a really good question, Denise. Good to see you also. So when conventional medicine is referring you to a genetics counselor or conventional medicine's running a genetics test, they're specifically running genetics on the cancer or on the tumor. And while that can be telling for specific treatments, and I won't really speak to that because I do believe there is some really great science that has gone into evolution of based on genetics, how to target a specific tumor or cancer with chemotherapy. It's a completely different picture. So what we always say, it's the somatic theory of treating cancer versus the metabolic theory. The somatic theory is, I'll give you a very like poor example, but something that helps me understand. So I want you to picture two fish bowls. You've probably seen this. It's also known as the germ theory. So you have one fish bowl that's super dirty and nasty. Nobody's cleaned the algae off the walls of the fish bowl. The fish is like super sick. Then you have another fish bowl over here, right? The fish is healthy, it's fine, whatever. So they're looking at this fish bowl and the fish is super sick. And they're like, what's going on? Why is he so sick? And the fish bowl is filled with algae and poop and nasty stuff. But rather than changing the environment of the fish bowl, they just inject the fish with medication. They give him antibiotics. They're giving him all kinds of meds. And they're like, he'll be fine. Whereas this fish over here in the fishbowl, he's in clean water, he's thriving. The mistake is they never cleaned the environment the fish was in. So they're just going to continue to medicate this fish because it's in a nasty, disgusting environment. They never cleaned the environment of the fishbowl. They're just medicating the fish. And that's a very elementary example of the somatic theory of cancer versus the metabolic theory. And we come from the metabolic approach where we want to teach you how to heal the terrain, heal the body. And again, I'm not saying chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery is not helpful. That can absolutely play a role. As you know, Denise, your son went through a bone marrow transplant, like saved his life. So there's an absolute need for that. But when you think of genetics and when the doctor is like, hey, we want to have you meet with a genetic counselor, what's going to be way more effective is doing his nutrigenomics, which shows us his DNA, his makeup, his SNPs, what can be corrected, what he's prone to. I just did a report for one of our families, and their child is already prone to really high levels of inflammation, high histamine, and poor methylation. And this child's HSCRP, which is an inflammation marker, was at 30. You guys, we want HSCRP to be under 1. So when I saw that this child's genetics predisposed her to inflammation, and then I saw her lab marker of, oh my gosh, an extraordinarily scary number of CRP, I was like, okay, listen, we got this. You're predisposed. Your body's reacting. We got to pull this down. So the genetics in the hospital are generally looking at just specifically the tumor or the cancer and not the terrain. So just know that. And again, while and I'm not saying it's not helpful, because if your child is in a situation, especially with a solid tumor, I think that can be helpful for treatment, for targeted treatment. I don't study chemotherapy, right? I don't study like the specific targeted therapies for different tumors. I understand chemo. I know the chemos that are contraindicated with natural treatments and blah, 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 but I think that can be helpful, but it's not ideal for like the big picture. And then the only other thing that I think is helpful to test outside of the normal blood markers, right? We have a pretty extensive list of blood markers that we encourage our families and our programs to test. It's fairly extensive, and I always like say that with, I know what it's like to walk through pediatric cancer, and your kids are the physicians are not as likely to pull markers that are outside of the normal CMP CBC range, right? So I recognize that you're fairly limited on that, but we do provide an option for them to order it separately. And so there's a whole level of markers that we can look at as well that are blood. But in addition to blood, CBC, CMP, which we can do a lot with, the only other test through active treatment is glyphosate that can be helpful. And the reason for this is, listen, we all are going to test for glyphosate. If you live in America, if you've ever lived in America, you're going to test for glyphosate. But I like to be able to see the levels, because if I can see, oh my gosh, the glyphosate levels are high, I have a pretty specific protocol we can use to help. And that generally isn't changed with active treatment. So what we do not do during active treatment is organic acids tests, stool tests, allergy tests, because it's kind of a waste of money. You think about all the treatment your child's going through, right? And all the chemo they're getting into their body, and their immune system's going crazy. It's just gonna be all over the place. So rather than wasting your money on a test that is not going to be super indicative of reality, it's going to be indicative of exactly right now, which you don't have control over, right? You don't have control over the treatment they're going through. Instead, we take 3x4, the nutrigenomics test, maybe a glyphosate test, some blood markers, and we go, hey, we're going to support your child through this safely with this information. But then when you go to remission, there's a whole nother thing it opens up. And what I usually recommend is waiting. If like I had my perfect case scenario, if your child's in remission, I would wait 6 months to do our organic acids, excuse me, or stool testing and food sensitivity testing, even HTM, the hair tissue mineral analysis. So I would ideally wait 6 months. And the reason for that is like, just think about the onslaught of toxicity and treatment that they walked through, right? That they experienced. Their body has to kind of get rid of that. And my goal is I want to see a really clear picture of where they're at. And I don't want it to be construed by the toxicity or leftover, the leftover situation from treatment. And so still we'll use 3x4, we'll use glyphosate, we'll use blood markers, and there's a lot we can do with that. And then 6 months outside of chemo and radiation, then we start doing organic acids tests. There's actually a test that I absolutely love. It's called the vitamin tox test, and it's through a company that I'm an affiliate with, or I should say a practitioner with. You can only order it through a practitioner. And it gives us kind of an overview. So, and I will tell you right now, my perfect scenario is and this is for if your child's in remission. I've already shared with you if your child's in active treatment, we want to do nutrigenomics through 3x4. It's a good active set of blood markers, which if the best you can get is CBC, CMP, add in vitamin D if you can, that would be great. And maybe glyphosate. Awesome. There's so much we can do with that information. Post-treatment, I want to see same thing, 3x4, blood markers, glyphosate, great. But then we can do this kind of, I think the test is $500 for what we call the vitamin tox test. I actually, in a private clinic, when I'm seeing clients one-to-one, I call it the starter kit. But it is hair tissue mineral analysis. It's an organic acids test, and it's a stool test. And it gives me, hold on one second. Somebody's knocking at my door. I was like, hey, Sayla, somebody's here. So it's going to give us a kind of a bird's eye view of what's happening and where to take the next step. So by looking at the organic acids test, the stool test, and the hair tissue mineral analysis, I'm able to see, oh my goodness, your child is super high in mercury, or your child needs way more potassium. Or I'm able to see, wow, you might be in a moldy environment because their organic acids test is showing high for mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are the residual toxin from mold exposure. It may show me they're high in endotoxins, environmental toxins, which would come from new carpet, new paint, or metals, things like that. Their stool test may give me a sneak peek at going, ooh, there's some major parasitic environment here, like there's some parasites, or it might just say they are super deficient in this specific bacteria. And so the testing is like Google Maps, right? And I am all about, and I've learned in my training, like test, assess, and then address. And we're limited on what we can do that through active treatment as far as testing. However, please don't misunderstand that there's so much you can do as a parent to support your child through there and mitigate their side effects and symptoms. But after treatment, oh my goodness, we need Google Maps like supercharged, right? We need to know what to do, where to go, and what's next. And so when I look at that starter kit, we call it the starter kit, but the vitamin tox test, and I look at the results and I compare it to their genetic, their nutrigenomics, and I look at their blood markers, I'm able to go, you know what? I think we need to look at home. I'm going to ask mom to get a $300 mold test on her home and just see like what's going on there, because your child tested super high in mycotoxins. And maybe mom's like, actually, no, I know it's not that. I know it's school. They're at school. And I think that's the issue, which has happened more than you can imagine. So I say that to just like, this is the Google Maps. It gives us the direction of where to go and how to steer you, how to support you, and just addressing your child's concerns. And then and comparing that to their nutrigenomics so we can see, oh, this is why they're having issues with the mold, but you're not. Because they don't have the methylation pathway to tolerate it. You do, they don't. And this is why in many homes you'll hear somebody say, well, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't know why you're struggling. Even in a family, like Shannon was saying, she wants to do it on her whole family. Yes, there's some inherent genes, but everybody tolerates things differently. And so diagnostic testing is really just Google Maps for your healing journey is really what it is. And working with somebody that understands how to do that and how to work with you in your healing journey. And during cancer, it's a little bit more limited, right? You need somebody that's familiar with pediatric cancer, that's familiar with like the drugs they're using, and they don't want to do anything that's contraindicated. And then post-treatment, it's a little bit freer. You don't have to worry so much about contraindication, but you want somebody that knows what they're doing to support you in that journey. That was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful, but I'm happy to answer questions.
If you guys have questions, you can feel free just to come off mute and ask away. Shan, do you have any questions?
I was just gonna say, I love the fact that you're encouraging someone to walk you through that, because even though, like, this was before you were going through the 3x4, like you hadn't even started that. So I went through Dagmara and the nutrition genome and paid the 400, and that's without follow-up. That's what, I mean, I got this email of like 17 pages of things, and I'm slightly educated. Like I've learned a lot from you. I've gone back to school. I've really been in this for the last 8 years, and it really does feel overwhelming when
Yep.
you're sitting there and you're looking at that and going, what does that mean? Like, can you give me a meal plan? Like, can you
Totally.
tell me like what's the schedule for detox, what supplements I should take? Because it just seems very generic. And so to have someone walk you through that, no matter how confident you feel, it's just having someone hold your hand just feels good.
Yeah. I mean, and even being a parent, you're like, I feel like I need somebody else to help my own child, like being the best caregiver for your own family can be hard too.
I have a question.
Yeah, Denise.
So for someone like me, like I'm currently not in the Thrive Beyond Cancer, and I'm interested in the organic
Acid test.
acid test. Like, what would you encourage, or like advice? Like, how do I get started on that if I'm not under, your doctor
Panic.
Panic? Like,
Yeah.
where do I go from here? Like, what could I do?
Yeah, I think I would recommend, and this is the hard part. And you guys, I just had a conversation actually with Dr. Naisha Winters about this. If you know who she is, she wrote the book Metabolic Approach to Cancer, and um, I went through her program. I'm actually still going through it. She's so gracious with me. I'm like, dude, it's taking me so long. I'm doing so many other things. There's literally like 4 of us that do pediatric cancer in the whole world right now. And it's devastating. So between Dagmara, who's not seeing patients because her sweet girl is fighting for her life, myself, Dr. Naisha is not seeing people. I'm working on currently, and this is a prayer, if you want to set up a prayer, a practitioner who is trained by Dr. Naisha, also worked very closely with Dagmara. She may be coming on board with our Thrive Through and Beyond Cancer Formula program to help as a support. All that to say, there's just limited people who are familiar with pediatric cancer that can support. However, that said, there are still practitioners that are functionally trained that know how to interpret an organic acids test, that know how to interpret a stool test. Can they directly relate that to your son's history and genetics? I don't know. But there's plenty of people that can interpret the test results for you. My goal is actually, and there's a lot happening right now that I like I said, I can't share a whole lot about, but working on maybe creating a situation where we are training more people to really do what we do in the pediatric world, and having more of a platform for that. It'll just take some time. So until then, I think really just finding, I would say look at two things. So look up, I'll put in the chat. Well, and you guys might need to find that. So if you go to the Nutritional Therapy Association, so go to Nutritional Therapy Association or the Integrative Health Practitioner, both of those websites, and then finally the Metabolic Terrain Institute. Okay, totally spelled that wrong. But those are 3 websites that if you go to their websites, I'm in all of, so I completed the functional nutritional therapy program years ago. I'm currently finishing the IHP and the MTI program. If you go to those 3 websites, I'm sure they have, I know that at least a couple of them have a location finder. Find a practitioner in my area that could support you through that. Doesn't mean they're trained in pediatrics, but they could support you through functional testing. And what I'm trying, we're in the process of stepping into a really incredible opportunity to have an in-person practice. And it's a very long story, but I've been spending the last 2 days talking to the practitioners at this office and saying, I know you feel afraid of cancer, but I need you to understand that your training is so incredible to help people with cancer. I just need to help train you and fine tune some specifics. People are afraid of cancer. The minute you bring up pediatric or cancer, it's intimidating. Yep. So Denise, you could even just say, hey, I would like to do some organic acids test on my son. He's done with active cancer treatment. Is that something you're willing to do? And I think if you say done with, they might be more willing to do it.
Yeah, I'll look it up because I was already looking for there's this lady that posted something about like finding more like holistic or like yeah, pediatricians near me, you know, and I'm already like trying to look for something, a different pediatrician. So I would definitely look into that, and you know, God willing, when I'm able to go back.
Are you in
I'm
Southern
in,
California?
yeah, I'm in LA.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know I already know about Dr. Moreno, so I'm like, you know, getting there. But that's someone I can go to too, right? Like a one for this.
Yeah, but you don't have to go to him for testing. He can help you interpret that's the cool thing about testing is a lot of the testing can be done at home. You just need to order it through a practitioner and then have somebody interpret the results. I would not use Dr. Moreno for testing as much as I would use him for hey, this is what's going on. Can you help me interpret it and support him?
Okay. Okay, cool.
I mean,
Okay,
he's well versed in testing. I'm just saying I would utilize his time for help me support him based on these results.
gotcha. Okay. Okay, thanks. And then because I'm just thinking that you don't interpret let's if like not being in the program and I order the testing and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm just making sure that's not something you do.
In our programs, yeah.
Yeah, in the program. Okay, just making sure that
Yeah.
it's not outside of the program, you know, like But okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then one more last thing. I don't know if there was a link for that one for the organics,
The testing,
the acid. Uh-huh.
there's not a link because you need to order it through the practitioner who's going to interpret it for you.
Gotcha. All right. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Except for the other one, 3x4.
3x4, you can order it totally.
All right.
And they put the link in the chat for that. That's
Yes.
you, and it'll come with a comprehensive report. But like Shannon said, even for me, I was like, I got it. And I was still studying and understanding the nutrigenomics. And I'm like, I'm gonna need like 7 cups of coffee to figure this out. And so
Okay.
it'll take a little time, but it'll give you it actually comes with like pictures and yeah. So it's fairly descriptive, but don't beat yourself up if you need more support around dissecting it.
Season, you've been very helpful. My son went through cancer this past year. It was Burkitt's lymphoma. That's after 5 different diagnoses. All started with a sprained ankle. So we're in the survivorship. We can't even get our oncologist to do a vitamin D test. They told me I can't give him vitamin D. I can't give him any magnesium. And I was like, that's not happening. They told me I can't put him in a hyperbaric chamber. I said, just because you won't help me doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. So we went through a lot, but you have been so helpful. And this testing is exactly what I was praying for. So thank you. All you do is make me cry. I cried at the beginning. I'm crying now. So obviously there's emotions here for sure, but thank you so much. And thanks for doing this today. I appreciate it. If it's only for me, I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. How is he now? Is he in remission?
He is, yes. We're coming to Mexico next week to celebrate. We'll be in Playa del Carmen. My whole family's
By
coming.
me.
We're in the Embero Stars, so we are super excited. I mean, that's what I asked him for. Where do you want to go when you're out of treatment? And so he said we're going to Mexico, and that's where we're going.
Okay, you need to
23rd.
figure out. I don't drive in Mexico. I'm terrified. You have to be Mexican to drive in Mexico. Mexicans have this super skill where they can just drive on the highway and it's like super skills. I'm a
Okay.
gringa. I don't drive Mexico. Message me somehow. And
Okay.
if you can come to where we live, that's where everybody does like sees the dolphins and there's like a lot of things. I would love to give you guys a hug and meet you. I'm
Okay.
like 15 minutes from Playa del Carmen.
Okay, we're in the Barrow Star, wherever that is. And so,
Okay.
yes, great.
Oh, so Puerto Aventuras is where I am.
Okay. Well,
So
thank you.
tell
I
me if
just
you
wanted
come
to,
this way, and if you can't get a hold of me, like message on Kit Can. Sometimes my Instagram goes to like there's a hole. It's a hole. It's a deep hole sometimes. But Shannon's super active on our Instagram. So if you can't get a hold of me, message her and she'll text me and be like, Season, you got a
okay.
message.
But I mean, you have no idea. Every time I pray, I mean, you answer with whatever I mean, I say, Lord, where do I go next? And this is it. So super helpful.
I'm so glad.
Now
Well,
you're going to make her cry. Good job.
I know.
Let's turn those tables. Let's make Season cry. She always makes us cry.
Ah.
But she's right. You are very special to all of us and to this community. And I know Season touched on my sister, but it's funny because for those of you who I haven't met or heard my story, my sister passed away from ALS. And as soon as she passed, I was determined and I felt like God told me, like, you got to take this pain and make it your purpose. And I was interviewing with ALS organizations when a recruiter for Kick Cancer, out of the blue, I still don't even know how she found me and brought me into this world and told me to meet Season. And I just fell in love with her personality and her determination to make a difference and touch every child that is touched by cancer. And I just knew this is where my purpose was supposed to be. So I couldn't agree with you more with that statement that you made.
It's pretty special how it worked out.
Yes, absolutely. Well, any last questions? I know we've kept you guys here over an hour, but what amazing content. We will post this on YouTube. So if there's any specific parts that you want to go back and revisit, it will be up on YouTube. Shannon, I will do a better job at getting it up quickly for you. I will try to do it first thing tomorrow. But yeah, any other questions, anything you guys want to cover? Please don't rush off. Like Shannon and I usually stick around if there's any questions about the kit, really anything. This is kind of your time to own the community and ask away.
How about when you said methylene blue and you can't handle that? Like, what is that? I mean, I bought the methylene blue. I'm doing it, but I want John to do it. And it's like, now we shouldn't do it.
Not that you shouldn't. I just think there's like specific genetics that predispose you to not tolerating it well. So the GD6, GDP6, GDP, I'd have to look at my notes to totally remember, but I know, for example, is it the same gene for high dose vitamin C and methylene blue? I'd have to double check. But there's a specific genetic SNP that high dose methylene blue or regular methylene blue could be problematic.
Okay.
Meaning your body just isn't breaking it down. For high dose vitamin C, it's the same thing. Your body cannot break it down, and so it becomes more problematic. Now, if you're doing a daily like tincture on your tongue, is that problematic? Probably not. But generally, when we look at like high dose, is where we want to just be really mindful of genetics, right? And just looking at those SNPs. So I want to say, I'd have to pull up my notes, but it's the GD. I'd have to pull it up. I don't want to give you wrong information. But there are two specific genetics I like to look at for high dose vitamin C and methylene blue, just to make sure that you can clear it. Now, there's also like the thing about, and again, methylene blue isn't wrong, right? Like, it's not bad. It's just how much are you doing and how are you breaking it down? But I always say, like, there's so many benefits in things like microalgae, like spirulina, chlorella, things like that can actually really benefit your body and helping you chelate heavy metals and push things out. And during active treatment, we have to be more mindful of that. We don't want to like chelate all the things. But Jacqueline, that would be something just to confirm. And I'd have to get back to you on that because like I said, I need to look at my notes to confirm. The nutrigenomics is something that's new to me in the last 24 months. So I'm truly still studying it and understanding it. It's quite complex. But the biggest thing I would say is, like, if you were recommended this by a practitioner, confirm with them, hey, what's the genetic SNP that doesn't tolerate this well? And they may say the dose you're taking, totally fine. Don't even worry about that.
Okay.
Hi, Warren. Oh, go ahead.
When he had methotrexate, he didn't clear for 7 days. I mean, the first time around, it was so bad we couldn't get out of the hospital. The next time I kept saying, what do I do? How do we get this out of him? I did coconut water and I was doing tons of potassium. And I mean, we tried all this different stuff. I don't remember what it was, but he got out of there fast.
Awesome.
But
yeah, methotrexate toxicity is unfortunately like a kind of a common, yeah, we deal with that pretty frequently. So I'm glad you were able to figure that out. That's amazing.
We fumbled through it all.
Well, fumbled through it, but you got to the end result. Warren.
Hey, Susan. So as we were talking about methylene blue, just thought of like, what are your thoughts on like soursop tea and apricot kernels?
So those are fine. there's no contraindication with soursop tea and apricot kernels that would be indicative of like not being able to break it down. There, because it's more of a food-based nutrient and like an herbal tincture essentially, that both would not be they're not contraindicated with conventional treatment, and they're not problematic with genetic SNPs. There are two things. I know apricot kernels, like is it B17, I think? B17 studied tremendously, especially in Eastern cultures, of like being anti-cancer, and there's a lot of benefits. And then with soursop, again, same type of thing. Like that's an herbal tincture that's super supportive of cellular function. So those are things that I think would be a great complement. Like if you did a soursop tea in the morning and you had an apricot kernel supplement, where I always tell people don't get overwhelmed is sometimes like, I mean, and I know Warren, you guys are fairly new into this journey. I just remember having times where you're like, oh my gosh, and then I heard about this. Oh, and then there's this. Oh my gosh, like it can just feel super overwhelming with all the things. But this is where I always just say like praying for discernment, because if these things keep coming up, I'm like, okay, we're doing that. Like soursop tea and apricot kernels to me would be like, if that's accessible to you, go for it. So it's just a part of your routine. And especially if he's willingly taking it. And they're actually helpful for everybody, not just cancer patients. Those are both beneficial to the mitochondria. So I think it would be great if and then, because you're in our program. So every week when we work together, if you're like, hey, this is what's going on, we may kind of more target specific suggestions based on what will help him in the moment. And we might need to pull things out. And we can do that as we need to, but I wouldn't hesitate incorporating that. Neither of them are problematic and they're both helpful.
Okay. Yeah, no, because like I'm in this rabbit hole of researching all these different things, and I'm talking to actual cancer survivors that are adults, and they went through the non-conventional ways of curing their cancer, and they're also saying, yes, this is true, this is helpful. But then when I mentioned some of these things to my wife, she's like, oh, you're crazy. What are you doing? What's all this stuff? So it's like two different perspectives of, what works. And it's just kind of a little bit of a challenge to kind of be on the same page in terms of our common goal, which is to cure, our son. So,
Right. Well, and you have the same common goal. It's more of like your approach.
right.
And that is, don't we have a call on that? Did we do a call on that?
We actually have a call tomorrow. I didn't schedule
Well,
one
no,
yet.
I know you and I have a call. We have a
Yeah.
call, but I feel like we had a call. Did we not do a cancer talk on that? We should.
This
We
is
should
my first
do,
one.
what's that?
This is my first call, so I don't know.
This is your first Thrive Together
Yeah.
talk. I know I have a podcast episode on that, Warren. So
Okay.
I'll try to find that and send it to you.
Okay.
But that would be a great topic, by the way, Dana and Shannon, to do like just that whole, because this is like comes up every single day. Like the topic of one partner is all in and the other partner is super skeptical because they're trusting the doctor. I mean, this is
It's so weird you say. I actually just talk about praying for discernment. I just had this conversation. The gal at the smoothie place up the street, I think I've told you, and they sponsor kid
yeah,
cancer. Her daughter has eye cancer. And she was just asking me today how to navigate that because her husband is still not even convinced that she has cancer. And so it's one of those things. I know. It's like, but yeah, he's very much on this side and she's very much over here. And it's hard. I mean, that's hard when you have healthy kids,
yeah, yeah.
alone when you're, going through something like this, like being on the same page. But I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like, and even with healthy kids, like you ultimately want their success and their
The
health.
goal is the
Them to be
same.
happy.
It's
Yeah.
just like figuring out how to see
Yeah.
how to just be in agreement and work together in that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's tough.
But yeah, that's good. Oh, Shannon, we'll
Okay,
put
but
that
you
on
have
the
to
list.
ask Josh to be the guest speaker.
See, we
Good
did
luck. You
talk
can
about
convince him.
that, and we
You-
knew that it would be hard to get him on. And so
But
we
Okay.
haven't
he might
done
wouldn't.
it.
It's that topic because it's something he's
He
passionate.
will if it's that topic, and if I will have to do the favors to make it happen. You just have to ask.
This is Season's husband, for those of you who don't know who we're talking about.
He's so good at speaking to this though. It's like that
Yeah.
because he's coming from that experience. So yeah, you ask Dana. He won't say no to you. He might say maybe, but he'll say yes, and then I'll just do what I have to do to make it happen.
Has all the women on the call laugh.
Yeah, a bribe, all bribery. It's like we bribe our kids, we have to bribe our spouses. Same thing.
We bring them to a conclusion they think is their own. We'll put it
There
that
you
way.
go.
Any
That's
other
all.
questions, guys? Has everybody on this call, have you all received our cancer kits? Because I know some people who are on season, yes? Okay, I know Jacqueline.
Warren, have you guys gotten a kit?
We have, yes.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
Good.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, if you haven't, if anybody hasn't, please request one. We've been working super hard to make some updates to it. We just added some new products. We added Pluck. Why do I always want to call it Cluck? Is it Cluck or
It
Pluck?
is no pluck with a P.
And I actually just ordered some for my family as well. And he's going to be the founder of that company is going to be on our April call.
Oh,
Um,
good. He's
yeah.
going to be on one of our Thrive talks or our Thrive coaching calls soon too.
So for those of you who aren't
Great.
familiar with that, Pluck is a seasoning that you can put on, I mean, basically anything, and it's organ meat. So it's a great way to get your kids to eat that. But he's also just a wealth of knowledge. And so he's still kind of playing around with the topic that he wants as well. But yeah, and we also just added the Redmond salt. They just came out with a new kids electrolyte. So it's I haven't tried them yet, but I love their electrolytes. Have any of you guys tried them? So if you've gotten our kits from a while ago, that's a couple of our newer products. So
I've
yeah, if
got
you
it right here, but I haven't tried it yet with
Oh,
Plex.
yay.
Yeah,
Okay,
oh
cool.
nice.
hard to
Yes.
see.
Oh, yeah.
Warren,
Let
let
us
us know.
know how he likes it.
Yep. He's just
Oh,
starting to be able to like eat a little bit more normal.
yeah.
So like I didn't want to introduce this to him yet because he would have just
Yeah.
vomited. But as soon as he can hold down a solid 8 ounces, I'm looking forward to giving him the electrolytes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, let
Good.
us know. But they're super clean. So we're super excited. And they're donating these to our kits completely free. So we used to have to purchase them. So everything that gets donated that we don't have to purchase is more money that we can put towards our other programs. So we're really excited about
That's
that
awesome.
partnership. Yeah. And then we are
And
also going
just
to be
right.
adding, yeah, and then the Thrive, right? You talk about that one. That's our newest, our other one, the
Yeah,
probiotic.
Just Thrive, the probiotic that I recommend to the families we work with. It's such a great probiotic. It's a spore base, so it's not like a specific bacteria. It really works with the child's gut, well, the adult and child. But they're going to donate a trial size bottle, which is like incredible. I just asked them thinking like, I don't know if they'll say yes. And they said, yeah. So it's super
And
cool.
those, so my kids are so picky about vitamins and they will actually eat those. And it was funny because I was telling Susan that my youngest has a lot of digestion issues. And that, when I switched her to the Just Thrive ones, it cleared everything up. She's doing so much better. So yeah, so those are good ones. I
Great
had her
help.
on some that were like very much aimed at kids and it just didn't do, it wasn't doing the job. So I'm excited for those to get into everyone's hands. And they're giving us discount codes, so I'll get those up on the website soon and then you guys can have access to um yeah, just the percentages that they're giving us off. And also they all give kickbacks to Kick Cancer too if you order through our links. So
Can you stay on that probiotic indefinitely, or do you have to change to different ones?
That's a great question. So I have a podcast episode on which I'm relaunching. My podcast has been on hold since December 1st, but I'm relaunching in the spring. But I'm pulling it up right now to tell you what episode. If you go listen to episode number, hold on, let me see. 110. Here, let me just I'll pop the link in the chat. So if you listen to this, I interviewed Tina, who's the founder. I met her 10 years ago, actually. I've been using the product for 10 years. We've been recommending it to clients. I interviewed her on my podcast and she really breaks down, especially for pediatric, like, is this safe? Because your oncologist is going to be like, don't take a probiotic, especially if they're neutropenic, blah, blah, blah. She breaks it all down. It's such a good description, but one of the things she does also address is that question, Jacqueline, of with this particular type of probiotic, you don't have to switch up because it's spore-based. However, what I tell my families that I work with, your child's been on an antibiotic, they're going to need Saccharomyces for a period of time. Your child, based on their stool test, may need Akkermansia. So they may need additional bacteria introduced from time to time, but no, this is one you don't actually have to necessarily switch up. I do still think you need to introduce good bacteria to your gut, you know, through food, but from a supplement perspective, you can stay on this.
And speaking of our future Thrive Talk, Dana, next month is Dr. Pennick.
Dr. Pennick.
Oh, yay.
Yes, I need to follow up with him to get his topic. So we'll let everybody know, and Shannon, I'll start pushing that out on social media. But yeah, we'll be having him so that'll be March, and then Pluck is going to be April, and then we have a very special guest for May, Brady Lucas. So that's another
Oh,
addition
that'd
to
be
our
great.
kit. So we
You know
did,
what? I think you should have our families bring their kiddos to the Brady's
yes, that'd be a
talk.
good one. And he could read the book.
Oh, that's a good idea. He's a
So
child
Brady,
cancer survivor.
2 times.
Lymphoma. He had Hodgkin's lymphoma, Warren. Super cool.
Oh,
He's written a
great.
book.
That would
Yeah.
be awesome because I would love my son to see that because, my son has a lot of mixed emotions and more low days and high days recently. So it would be good to see, or have him talk to someone who actually been through it. And
Warren, I could connect the two of you, because I bet you Brady would be happy to chat with him one on
Oh,
one.
for sure. I think so.
that would be
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. He's
I'll give you Warren's
okay.
contact.
He speaks all over the country. He's actually, I think this week at a big convention in Austin. But yeah, he wrote this book called Smiley Smile, and it's about a little turtle who lost his shell when he got cancer.
Oh, yes, that book was in the kit, and I
Oh,
read that.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, and apparently he lives in my town.
No way. Oh, are you in Washington?
he's in Maryland.
Yeah, I'm in Maryland, and
Oh,
he's
I
in.
think he was born in Washington.
Did he move? Because the book said he lives in Rockville, Maryland.
Oh, I think he might actually live on the East Coast. I think he was born in Seattle, maybe.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's it.
That would be crazy if he's in
Yeah,
your town. Okay, we
if
got to connect you guys.
Yes,
that would
we
be
will.
awesome. Yeah.
I'll connect to you guys because he would love that too. But yeah, he's going to be our guest because we just thought it was important. We haven't actually had someone on to speak about their own experience going through childhood cancer. So we're excited to have his perspective come May.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, please send me Warren's info, Caesar.
Yeah, I will. After this, I'll text you. Are you good with that, Warren, if I share your
Yeah,
number?
absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. That'd be great. Well, thank you guys.
Been such a beautiful
Thanks for putting these talks on and inviting people, and thank you guys for showing up. We're happy to just continue to support you, and please just share what we do with everybody. Like, these talks are free. And it's something that we can do consistently that doesn't cost us anything. We don't have to depend on donors to run these talks while we do for all the other, things that we do. But this is something we'd love you to just share with other people, and so we can reach as many families as possible.
For sure. And our YouTube is Kick Cancer Movement. So we've had some great talks in the past. So if there's any specific topic, you can probably find it on there. I think one of my favorite ones was that one that we had with Mark McAfee in November, which he talked all about raw milk, and it was like mind blowing and so fascinating. So that's when I would definitely recommend. There was another really great one with Autumn from Paleo Valley. So yeah, scroll through there and listen to any talks that you guys want to catch up on. And you can always reach out to me at Dana at Kick Cancer Movement if you have ideas or questions. I probably don't have the answer, but luckily I'm connected to the people that do, Shannon and Season.
Yeah, and you can
All
always
right.
message us on Instagram
Okay.
as well. So we'd love to hear from you guys, any ideas that you have or questions.
For
So,
sure.
thank you guys.
All right, guys. Have a great night.
Thank
Bye, you
Thank
guys.
you. You too.